Thanks for joining us this Friday afternoon. Still to come, the woman who was injected a little cha-cha-cha into Strictly Come Dancing. That's Alicia Dixon. And we return to the AT Garden, treating your moggy mishaps. But now, who could believe that it's been 25 years since the release of this seminal Christmas anthem?
Where nothing ever grows, no rain or rivers flow. Do they know it's Christmas time at all?
Back then, Bob Geldof and the pick of the British pop world were on a mission to feed the world, in particular the millions who were starving in Ethiopia. But with poverty and disease still rife in Africa, did the efforts of the biggest names in music prove futile? Did Band-Aid really make a difference? Here to discuss are broadcaster Caroline Feraday, Kelvin Mackenzie and Eve Pollard. Caroline, do you think it made a difference? Did they have any effect on it?
It certainly made a difference at the time in terms of awareness amongst the public. And now when you hear that record again, every single person knows the words, everybody knows the sentiment. And it made an awful lot of difference, didn't it, to Bob and to Sir Saint Bob and to Bono. But to the people of Africa, we've still got 6.2 million people that the UN say will need to be fed and will need food aid in Ethiopia. So has it made their lives better day to day? Doesn't look like it, does it?
Kelvin, ex-newspaper editor, both you and Eve, there's always this feeling about things which capture the public imagination for a moment, that newspaper editors, news journalists will suddenly tire of it. Ethiopia has not gone away. It's still there, and yet it's no longer current. The novelty value is worn off. Isn't that a bit of an indictment, really, of our society?
Well, it might be an indictment of sort of people's ability to concentrate on an issue for more than 2.5 seconds. I'm not really sure it's the journalist's fault. It's probably more the people who buy the papers or listen to television stations. But I think the issue about this is I bow to nobody in the energy that was required by Bob Geldof to put that together. I mean, that was an astonishing feat. And the fact that it did him some good, or did the Stars some good, I think is inconsequential for the money that was raised at the time, and continues, by the way, by being invested, continues to supply about £2 million a year. But this is the issue. If you look at the Horn of Africa, where major starvation problems are, the problem there is that in Ethiopia, since 1984, which is when this came out, the population of Ethiopia, incredibly, has doubled from 24 million to 48 million, creating even more issues for a place that has tremendous famine, has massive drought, etc. And the other issue is this: £50 billion a year goes from the world into Africa, right? The dependency culture of Africa is shocking, right? And what we know from life is if you give somebody 50 quid, that's fine, they'll spend it. If you actually incentivise them in some rather different way, actually they'll probably dig a well, sell the water, buy a mobile phone, create business. And that's not what's happened. And the third thing that's happening is that corruption, because Africa is tribal, when they get hold of this 50 billion, that's fiver for you, Tom, fiver for him, fiver for him. But actually, those people over there, actually, they're in a different tribe. We're not going to give them the money. So, and the other people who are benefiting from this are actually some of the aid agency people, where there is a significant question mark about whether they are actually taking part in the take as well. There's some shocking stories
all
out
of
there.
which, Eve, could put you off donating at all, but presumably we should donate, we should help, we should try to help.
We should. I mean, the interesting thing, I remember when Band-Aid, this record came out, I remember, I think it was Mrs. Thatcher who said, giving money to Africa is poor people giving money to rich people. What she meant was the rich people in those countries took that money and put it in their Swiss bank accounts. I think what's happened now is I think we've got smarter, and I think that's one of the good things of Band-Aid. People like me, for example, I've got involved in a group where we help grandmothers who bring up children who've lost their parents because of HIV and AIDS. And so you give them just the money for them. You know exactly where the money's going.
How can you do that?
You can do that. And up and down this country, there are lots of small charities where the money goes direct to Africa. It does build the well. It does do some things. I agree with Kelvin. Africa's totally corrupt. But giving your money to a small thing where you know what happens, and some people in this country have gone to Africa to see the results of the money they've given, and that's the best way of checking that the money gets to the right people.
Caroline, I don't think anybody's going to argue that it was not an enormously good-hearted thing to do, Band-Aid. It is this worry that people have, isn't it? Particularly with larger organisations, not least the money getting there to finding its way, but also the amount that's taken off the top for administration, which worries folk, which is why smaller charities are perhaps better.
You walk through any town centre on a Saturday afternoon and there they are, the charity muggers, the chuggers down the high street, who are all taking a commission off the charity. If I want to go and give some money to those charities, I'll go and find them on the internet and donate money that way, because
there'll be a lot of charities out there who are gasping at you saying this, because they're not all in the same.
But they take an enormous commission.
All
those
of
people,
them?
those charity muggers on a Saturday high street take commission on the money that you give to that charity.
So what for you is the best way of making sure that if you want to donate, for instance, to Africa, to Ethiopia, how do you think you ensure it gets there?
I think you've got to have some awareness of what you want to give and how you want to give it, whether it's clothing, benefit, you know, and also about what you personally can manage. Some people might want to clear out their closets and say, I've got this clothing, and you work with a charity that does that directly, or if you've got money to spend, perhaps you can do that. But there's definitely a case. Go on, Calvin.
Funnily enough, I was in the Masai Mara in Kenya earlier this year, and the poverty there is beyond anything. I mean, you know, there are parts of this country where you feel there are great difficulties. It's nothing at all compared to what's going on out there. And I tried to get involved to try and contribute towards some help for a school, which is probably similar to what Eve did. It was phenomenally difficult, actually, to hand money over. And unless you were prepared, actually, which I wasn't prepared to do, I must be honest, I was too busy on the Titchmarsh show. Unless you were prepared to actually go out there with the wood yourself and build it, you could never be sure where all that stuff was going to go to and the different ways through it. But never think that there aren't people out there who need help. I mean, you know, things may be bad in inner London, but they are nothing compared to Africa.
You did a charity record yourself? I did. But you were responsible for organising it.
So
do you feel that worked?
Yes, I did. We raised a lot of money. It got to #1. If it hadn't been for Paul McCartney, it wouldn't have got anywhere, right? And watching the show business community at work, right? They don't have to do these things, by the way. They don't have to make these things. It may do themselves a bit of good. It may help them in the charts a little bit. Actually, they give their time. They're very good people, basically, and they're very decent people, and I think they're worth a round of applause, frankly.
Thank you. Well, thanks to Caroline, Kelvin and Eve. Thank you very much indeed. Still to come on Friday's AT show, Alicia Dixon on how she tangoed her way to a place on Strictly Come Dancing's judging panel. And I'll be down on the AT allotment getting to grips with your gardening gripes. We're back in a moment.